Welcome to Withdraw Consent. I'm Jack. Today I want to talk about the Warsaw Uprising. I got an email from someone who wants more information on it, and I had done the research on this to include it in the Holocaust series, but then I decided it didn't really fit, just because there wasn't much there. But so I'm basically going to explain the story. Normally, I'm not going to include in the Holocaust series. Basically, those are more fact based. I'm going to give a lot of opinion here. I'm going to give you some facts and the opinion. But let me read you the email I got. Right, this is from Titus. And he said, "Hey, Jack, today is 1st August, anniversary of Warsaw. Everyone is pooping on Germans and Hitler. Could you make a video on that? Why did Poland make an uprising if you say Germany wasn't that bad as mainstream history claims?" Okay, so he's talking about the Warsaw Ghetto, right? And so he says, why did Poland make an uprising? Poland did not make an uprising. The Jews in the Warsaw Ghetto did, okay? And basically the reason why they did is they weren't being fed enough. So let's talk about the food situation in Germany during the war, right? So you have the people getting the most food are the soldiers, right? The wives and children back home are getting a less than 1 day ration, okay? Now there are Jews who are getting the full soldier ration, and those are the people who are in the V2 factories, and they're scientists and stuff, and they're literally necessary. Well, they believe they were necessary for the war effort, despite how the V2 thing went, which were the rockets that they shot at, the futuristic rockets that they were shooting at England. And then then you had concentration camp people who were in these work camps, and they were doing work. And they were getting a ration somewhere around what the women and children got back home of the soldiers, and somewhat below that, right? Then you have the people in the Warsaw Ghetto, okay? They're getting even less than the people in the concentration camps. And so basically what happens is if you are the leader of a country and you're at war and you're getting attacked from every side, and you tell the women and children of your country, hey, would you sacrifice, and your kids are going to go to bed a little hungry, kind of hungry. Would you do that? And then they say, yes, my leader, just win us this war, right? But then you take a group of people who hate you, like the people in the Warsaw Ghetto, and you say, you guys are going to have to sacrifice. You're taking much less than you need. Well, they're not going to put up with that. I wouldn't put up with that if I was in that situation. I don't care about your stupid cause. I just want my kids to eat. And I would rather die on my feet than live on my knees. So I would have been in the Warsaw Uprising if I was Warsaw Uprising, if I was a Warsaw Jew, God forbid. So basically that's what it comes down to. And so what I would like to say here is that we got this thing going on in the US right now. Ever since J.D. Vance got the nomination for vice president, they do stuff on the mainstream media and they just call J.D. Vance and Trump weird, right? And the response to that is not, well, no, you're weird. Because if you were to say that, you say, well, you're weird because you want to trans children, you like pedophilia, like you got all this, like your worldview is insane. But they're not weird. Weird is completely subjective. So from your worldview, they're weird, right? So if you were to say, hey, about the Warsaw Ghetto issue, if you were to say, well, you probably shouldn't have been the group that was pushing the pedophilia, the trans stuff. We're in the exact same situation right now that they were in Weimar, Germany, right? And so the Germans are trying to correct this, I did a video recently where I was talking about if there was a break from Israel and the bankers and Hollywood and different stuff like that, there would be a cost. And so that's what happened in Germany, right? They had, the first trans surgery done in Berlin. They had all this stuff going on. They said, no, we don't want that. So they did the break. They had a worldwide boycott. All these people started working against them. So eventually those people in the Eastern occupied territories, because imagine, I talked about this before, there was no Warsaw Ghetto in Paris, right? In Paris, they were left alone for the most part. Some who were active social democrats who were literally fighting against, but it wasn't as coordinated as what was happening in the East in Poland. So mostly Jews were left alone. Now, I'm not talking about Vichy France. I'm talking about German occupied France. And so on the East, it was much different than that. So if like what I was saying about the weird thing, if you try to tell people who were pooping on Germans, if you try to tell them, well, they shouldn't have been transing kids, this and that, that's not going to go over because they're probably into that stuff now. The people who are saying this, and so it's basically not a fight you can win. And so if you look outside of the Warsaw Ghetto, right, and you just look at occupied Poland, right? Well, let's look at Eastern occupied Poland, okay? So in the East was occupied by the USSR in 1939. Then it was liberated during Operation Barbarossa so it was under Polish rule, then under USSR in 39, and then under Germany afterwards, right? So it was literally liberated by the Germans, and you could go to church again and stuff like that, which I was talking about in the Einsatz group and Holocaust videos. And so it's not like Poland uprised. There was no Polish uprising because the Polish people were happy with the German occupation. Now, there was a group of them, which I've talked about before, who wanted to drop their own. They were nationalists too, like the Germans, and they wanted to drop their own army. And the Germans said not at this time because, of course, they're at war on the other side of Poland, and they don't need a nation in between them. They need an occupied territory for now. That's an after-war thing you could talk about. So it definitely wasn't Poland rising up or the Polish people. It was Jews. It was a foreign people living among the Polish people who have a religion, and they're into some terrible stuff, we'll say. So basically, you can see why I didn't include it in the Holocaust series, because it's not like if I tell you the factual dates of when this uprising and this, it's not really that relevant. It's more of the food situation. And if you were in a reverse situation, and it was Jewish people and it was German people in the Warsaw Ghetto, don't think that they would have gotten any food. Like they're not like us, and we're not like them. Because one of the things when the Germans are telling the German women and children that you get less than a ration a day, it's because some of that food's going to the Warsaw Ghetto. You know what I'm saying? They wouldn't do the same in return. But we don't care if they would do the same in return, because we do what's morally right based on who we are. You know, if in the South African thing, or you can even go back to Zimbabwe, when they're expelling the white people, they're chopping their heels off and doing all this stuff. When we want to do expelling in the future, we're not going to behave like they behave because of who we are. And so the Warsaw Ghetto was a tragedy. And it was a tragedy too, because the easiest answer is just get rid of them. Just send them somewhere, deport them somewhere. But nobody wants them. Because if you remember, I think it was in the Blood for Goods episode. Well, there's a couple parts in that. Do you remember the Polish guy said, if you can find a way to deport all the Jews, we'll put a statue of Adolf Hitler in Warsaw. That was from the Polish government pre-war. So they don't want him in Poland, but they don't want him anywhere else, in the United States, anywhere else. And at the point of that episode, at the end, when they said, hey, we'll give you, I believe it was 1 million Jews for 10,000 weatherized trucks that will only be used on the Eastern Front. At that point, the Allies said, no, keep the Jews. Because literally nobody wanted them. But Germany can't feed them. If they were in the U.S., God forbid, the U.S. could feed them during the war. Some other places could, but Germany is the last place that they could feed them, and they were stuck in this terrible situation. So that's what I've got for you. It's not really that helpful for you, Titus, because you're obviously in Europe, I'm just going to guess. And because nobody in the United States, not one soul knows what August 1st stands for, just not one. And so there's nothing you can really say. You just, if you're against all the stuff that Hollywood is for, that Weimar Republic Jews were for, that trans LGBTQ people are for, if you're against all that stuff, you making that argument is not going to work the same way as arguing, well, you're weird back in the U.S. today is not going to work, because it's just a difference of values, and it's a subjective view of what's weird. And so, because the answer is just don't be into all that stuff, and you wouldn't have been in the Warsaw Ghetto. You would have been in a situation like the Jews were at in France, and German occupied France, where they weren't in a ghetto and they didn't starve, right? Anyways, and the main point in answering your question is that it wasn't the Polish doing the uprising. It was just Jews. It was a foreign people who Judea declares war on Germany, were at war with Germany, and who were then behind the lines elsewhere in Poland doing their guerrilla warfare. And then you lock some of them in a city, and then you don't have the power to feed them. Anyways, that's what I got for you. So on Wednesday and Thursday, I'm going to be doing some interesting stuff about this situation and about how the situation started, this most recent one in Israel. And it's stuff that I've never seen anybody cover. It's about the bombing on the soccer field, which is not what you think it is at all. And then another one about the assassination of the Hamas guy, who's the moderate negotiator who gets assassinated. Is very strange stuff, which is escalating this conflict, which is probably already escalated by the time this is published, because I'm filming it on the 9th. But it's still interesting backstory to figure out what's going on and how these terrible countries work. Anyways, hope to see you then.